Hello, everybody. Welcome into episode 5. We are Brian and John, and we are joined by April Flores today. April is a registered dietitian for about 2 years now, and we've been looking forward to this conversation probably for about a month and a half when we originally scheduled it with April. So we're super excited to talk about April's journey into the world of nutrition, and even before that, into the world of fitness, because I know she's been involved with both of those for quite some time now. So we're really excited to get into the conversation with her today. So, April, thank you so much for joining us. How we doing?
Yeah, nice to be with you guys today.
It's awesome. Thank you. So, we really wanted to get into a lot today. And when we were planning all this, we kind of reminded ourselves, all right, let's dial it back a little bit. Let's focus on a few key areas because there's so much
So
in
much,
here
yeah.
that there's so much, right? And there's so much that we can go into, but a lot of it people can relate to and people will have questions on and want to learn more things about. So it's a broad topic that will gauge a lot of people's interests. So I'm super excited to get into it here today. So I guess we'll start off with like interview 101 and go into your background a little bit, your profession, how you got here, and then we can kind of dive into the more fun stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a registered dietitian. I went to school at the University of St. Joseph. Prior to that, I had just been working. Prior to that, I found fitness and nutrition through my personal journey and struggle with weight as a child. And that's how I found a good, healthy lifestyle that worked for me. It's really become not only that outlet that helps keep me sane, but also what has connected me to so many people. Like I probably have so many more friends and who I consider family in the fitness world and nutrition world, because that's just typically who I connect to. So I think it does go to speak to going to the gym and, living that healthy lifestyle is so much more than just showing up and being on the elliptical for 45 minutes and being bored out of your mind. So I found I found my start there, and then I realized how much nutrition played into it. And I'm big into all of the science and math, so I found a lot of extra interest in that and really understanding that it is so much more involved than most people will ever need to know that it is, but that it is so complex. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, so I started off, I did my bachelor's, I went in ahead and did my master's and went through the dietetic internship there as well. So all in all, it was probably about 6 years of schooling plus all that stuff wrapped up. So it was quite a bit to get here. So sometimes when people say that they're nutritionists, I question it sometimes, because to become a registered dietitian, you're really put through the ringer, and it's definitely not an easy track. But when you've gone through all of that training, you really gain an understanding for why everything is held up at that such a high level. You really are able to understand that on the clinical end, there's so like people's lives are really counting on you not messing up at the hospital. But on kind of the other side of the spectrum, when you're just working with people and counseling them, you're really able to figure out what at the root is needs to be changed in order to really make any of the nutrition interventions that we try to implement effective, right? So that's one of the reasons why working with people kind of outside of the clinical setting is kind of my jam, because clinical setting is very acute. We're trying to make sure that everything kind of stabilizes and stuff like that. But a lot of the changes have to be, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, come from motivation within that person to want to make those changes. And then it's finding the right coach to figure that out. So there's a huge coaching aspect to all the nutrition stuff that I do with my clients, because you can't kind of do one without the other very well. So they both go hand in hand.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so your fitness journey, like you said, you started at a young age and you gauge interest at that point. At what point was it like a staple in your life, like a need that you needed to have that in part, as part of your day? It became part of your identity. Like, when do you think that really clicked in your mind and you made it feel like, okay, this is something that I need in my day to day?
It was probably sometime mid high school. And then it just kind of continued, and it's become what kind of is my outlet. So whether
Right.
it's me going out, putting my headphones on, zoning out, and throwing kettlebells around, and that's my workout for the day, or whether it's teaching my group fitness classes and throwing on music there and jamming out with all of my members and coaching them. It go both of them just kind of give me that extra bump for the day. So I enjoy doing both for myself and with other people.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you do classes and stuff. How often do you do those?
Whew. So I teach 5 a.m. class Monday, so 4 days a week. I have Wednesdays where I take that break for myself to work on some extra training on Wednesdays for myself. But yeah, so 4 days a week at 5 a.m. It's a 3:30 wake up time to get up and moving and into the studio. Yeah. So, but it's one of those things.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's one of those things to where that's my happy spot. It's where, yes, it's work, but it never ever feels like work. I go in, I get to chat with people, I throw on music, we get to work out, and then everybody leaves and is good and set for the day. And that's probably the best part of it, is that I know when I joke about it, but when I release them off into the world for the day, like they have had a good solid 45 minutes to just set themselves up for success and focus on themselves before the rest of the day gets noisy, is kind of how I put it to them.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. So, like, how hard was that to kind of get used to? Like, were you ever not a morning person where, like, you have, because not only are you doing it for you, but you're doing it for X amount of people in a class too at that point. So was there
You got to
ever
bring
like
that
an
energy. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So was there ever was there an adjustment period where you're like, kind of dragging ass to get in at
No,
5 o'clock in the morning?
the morning part's the easy part. Try to catch me really late at night, and then it's it's rough. But the early mornings are probably the easiest for me to just kind of switch it on and go. And it does take a bit of getting your mind right, because even if you're having an off day or maybe you didn't sleep enough, you have to really just be able to flip that switch and turn it on and go. And I mean, it might be anything from the music that I listen to on my way in to kind of my routines in the morning before I get out of the house. But I'm usually able to draw from somewhere, in the short period of time that I'm up and awake and going before I've got to actually hit that start button at 5 a.m.
Yeah, yeah, right. That's like you, BG, man. Like you're that morning guy who gets up and gets after it with a workout right away. I'm not.
Oh, you got to. It's got to set that tone for the day, baby.
I'm strictly cardio, and then I'll work my way to a workout later on in the day. But so, like, do you have a morning routine, April? Do you have the same thing you do every single morning when you wake up until the morning or until the time you get to the gym?
So like today on my days where I try to kind of keep some time in the week for my training, even on the days where I do teach, I usually throw on Audible and listen to one of whatever the books that I'm listening to that kind of is speaking to wherever my brain is at for that morning. One of the ones that I frequent is The Gap versus the Gain, which is one of the books that one of the coaches that I work with introduced me to. And that's probably been one of the major books that has really been that thing where I'm like, okay, this is really changing a lot of the day-to-day thinking that I pull from. So that's one of the ones that I'll just throw on and I'll listen to it and I'll re-listen to it. I'll rewind it. I'll pull that quote out of it. And I'm able to pull all that stuff out, not only for me, but I notice that it comes out in the words that I speak to my class. It comes out into the words that I speak to my child, to other people that work for me. So it really does set the tone for my day. And my Audible list is very long, but that's one of the ones that I've been frequenting probably over the summer and maybe even before that.
Yeah, I saw you write that down, BG.
That's right, I did write that down. I'm a huge book guy. Love it. So, April, when you're working with a client trying to figure out, where to prioritize their fitness and nutrition, where do you normally start with them?
So I always like to sit down with somebody and just kind of give them the floor. Let them kind of give me an idea of where their mind is at, because understanding that I can write out workouts for you, I can hand you a nutrition plan that gets you all the macros based off your height, your weight, your age, all of that. I could just hand that to you. But I think without really understanding like what it is that you want to work on and what you really feel is what you're struggling with, that kind of all is purposeless. Like you just don't, it's not going to go anywhere. So when I'm first sitting down with somebody, I really try to understand, okay, what does your fitness look like, right? As far as routine, if it's nothing, cool. Like if it's absolutely, if we're starting from zero, that's awesome. Same thing if you're like, I haven't paid attention to anything that I've eaten in the past 2 years. Also great. But then I know kind of where that baseline is versus somebody who I might talk to. They're like, yeah, I work out a couple times a week. I try to be fairly conscious about what I have, pack my lunch when I go to work. So that first initial conversation is very important to understand, okay, which direction do we need to go with this and where is that initial starting point? And it's so different from everybody. I think that's one of the challenging things when people work in very, very large groups that are kind of like, this is the cookie cutter plan, and don't have the additional coaching to be like, here, this is how you can make it work for you. Because everybody's so different.
Do you find that, with that, people do struggle a lot with kind of their mindset towards food, where I don't want to necessarily say it's an addiction, but do you find that they have it's their outlet? So it's almost like you have to help coach their reprogram their mindset?
And I really find it with just about everybody. I really associate it with any type of substance abuse, an addiction in that way. And that's not everybody's track and what they've got going on. But for the people that do struggle with that, it is a very constant throughout the day, everyday situation that really puts a negative effect on all of their eating interactions. So it might be where they have a plan to go out to dinner, and because they are severely restricting food or they feel uncomfortable eating around people, there's so many things that really draw back to people's childhoods and how they associate that with how they interact with food now, that really people don't talk about it, right? They're just like, I want to lose weight, and that's wonderful. But if we don't figure out what are the things that have been kind of preventing you from making that progress long term, you might see that quick drop, which, like I said, I can hand you that meal plan. You could follow it for a month, 3 months, whatever. But if we're not really figuring out what are those habits that are kind of steering you off track after those 3 months or 6 months that kind of land you back in that same place, nothing ever really gets resolved. Everything is short term.
So do you have any recommendations for like our audience for trying to maybe kind of get past that roadblock if they know that they have a struggle with food, that maybe there's some simple solutions that they can start taking to try to get past that, either trauma or something?
Yeah, absolutely. And it really just takes a short amount of time. So whether, you pay attention to it for a few days, maybe a week, and just making notes, whether that be in your phone, in a, just in a notebook in your kitchen or your journal, and just realizing when are those instances that you feel any type of emotion towards the food that you're having. If it's sitting down to eat dinner with your family, but that's causing you stress, make a note of that. If it's going out to have dinner with your best friend on a Saturday night and that's bringing you happiness, making note of that. If it's that late night you had a really hard day and are super stressed out and it's that trip to the snack pantry or to get ice cream or to have that other, additional glass of wine, whatever it is, making note of that. Like, today was a super stressful day and I noticed that this is kind of what happened. Or you might have had a really stressful day and realized, oh my gosh, I didn't eat anything until like 6:00 at night and didn't have any water and I feel dehydrated. So I think taking a little bit of time to tune into that is really important, because if we don't tune into that as a starting point, we don't know that there's anything that needs adjusting.
Yeah.
That's super interesting. Because I think every day, like, people like who don't think of it in that way won't associate their feelings with the food they're eating, or vice versa, or the time frames, like you said, like stressful day, boom, what do? It's late night snack. Let's have a bowl of ice cream. Let's have like that comfort type feeling with food, but you don't make the connection of there's a reason that you're doing that, right? So that's super interesting. I can't imagine that everyone doesn't have something they can think about, for those who aren't on diets or whatever like that, oh, I did that like last week. You know what I mean? Like there's always something that will elicit that response, probably very recently in their days.
Yeah, and it may be, and acknowledging and figuring out those things, especially the ones that are maybe not as desirable, those feelings that are just like, oh, that didn't feel awesome, is understanding that those habits have probably been there since you were like really young, even into your teens and stuff like that. So changing them right away, or changing many of them, if you notice that there's many of them all at once, is going to be really challenging. So one of the things that I try to work with clients on is habit stacking and or adjusting. Maybe the actions are the same, but maybe the food choices are different. So maybe it's not a quick, okay, I'm just not going to go snack at the end of the night, but maybe it's like, instead of having half a bag of Lay's potato chips, it's a snack sized bag of chips. And you're like, okay, so there's that like incremental step in the right direction, to where it doesn't have to be like, okay, I can't eat after dinner and then I'm done for the night. And then you're sitting there like festering, and it just like creates this whole negative emotion to making those changes, versus like, okay, like, well, instead of having the whole half bag of chips of Lay's potato chips, I had this small one and I'm doing good. And like, I got, like, it was just enough.
It's progress.
Yeah.
Yes, it's progress. And eventually you'll be able to knock that bag of chips out in its entirety. But
right. And then maybe it goes to something else. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're touching on something that's super interesting there as well. Is you're not, when people go that they're going to be on a diet, I hate that word diet, first of all, because it just seems temporary, and you want to make lifestyle choices. And so what you're talking about is not trying to overwhelm yourself with, hey, I'm just going to start eating broccoli or salad for every meal, which you hear all the time. But it's like, hey, making those small changes, and then eventually those small wins will start to stack up, and you'll start to really change your perspective on food.
Yeah, for sure. And that's literally sounds like exactly what I kind of finish my initial sessions with to my clients. I never want them to walk out of my office feeling like they are on a diet. That is not the goal. Yeah. I want them to walk out after, whether it's 1 month, 6 months. I've had some clients working with me for 1.5 years at this point. I want them to walk out feeling confident that they know how to eat and they feel comfortable making choices throughout the day that they know work for them and are continuing that healthy eating pattern over time. So I want them to tell me like, hey, there was Saturday night, I had half a pizza and some wine and something like that. But when we've made that progress to where that's one meal in a whole week versus that was maybe several nights a week where that was kind of happening, those are the things that I'm like, okay, so we've made so much progress. But it's really identifying like, okay, for this person and their lifestyle, what does that look like, right? What does that daily meal pattern look like for them over time? You know, I want you to still be able to go out to have dinner with your family or your friends and to not be like, I've got to just get this salad and that's all I can have and I can't enjoy a glass of wine and I feel like I'm left out. Or completely, some people, because they feel like if they do put themselves in those situations, can't monitor, you know, what they're having, so they just won't go at all, and then they feel left out. So I never want any of the interventions that we put in place to have a negative connotation to the whole process. I want them to feel like good about and confident about what they're doing throughout the day, throughout the weeks, and then over a long period of time.
Yeah, so like, you know, when you're talking about that and stuff, and you know, a lot of times there's a factor of the people that you live with too, though. Could be, you know, having that influence on you one way or the other, right? But it usually takes more than just you to accomplish something.
For sure.
So do you ever have those conversations with your clients where it's about like their home life and the kind of food that's in their house and the way to maybe evolve that? So people have kids and, you know, spouses or whatever who just may not be eating that way, especially if you have kids in the house. There's always going to be some kind of temptation probably somewhere. So what are those conversations like?
Yeah, so I have some people that really, like, for whatever reason, it's very challenging for them to have their spouses get on board with the changes that they're making. So it does take quite a bit of additional coaching on that end, and most of it has to do with just having the confidence and the understanding of how to implement that. So if you're in that stage of change where you're like, I'm ready, I'm doing this, I'm making these changes, but your spouse is not, or you, like you said, you have kids in the house and there's other stuff in the house, there's that extra layer to where it's like, okay, how do we get creative with this, right? You don't want to be making 2 meals for your kids, a meal for your husband or wife, and then one for yourself. And then you're like,
right,
how did that even happen? And, you know, the kitchen's a mess and you still have to feed the dog, you know, just like, it's not practical to kind of try to work all of that in. So really understanding that if there's a solid group of foods that you feel comfortable with incorporating, or you find common foods that work for you guys, figuring out how that integrates throughout the day and throughout the week, so that you can kind of streamline the process. Not everything is going to be 100%. If your spouse wants to eat, you know, McDonald's on the way home, like, and that's what dinner looks like for them, and that's not what dinner looks like for you, just knowing that that's okay for them to, if that's where they are, that's fine. But understanding that you're just as well able to make something that nourishes your body in a way that you feel good about. So it's not always going to line up 100%, and understanding that, I think, is helpful to the process, is that it's not going to always line up 100% with the people that are around you, and that's okay. And just understanding that, like, they might be a little bit slower to the party than you are, and that's fine. Because I think one of the hard things is we try to project onto others what we think is right, what we think they should be doing, what they should be eating, how much they should be working out, whatever it is. But if that's not coming from somebody and them inside, it can actually really shut them down, especially if they really know that they do need to make that change, but they're just not there yet. That can kind of have a negative effect where they kind of shut down and they're just like, well, now I don't really want to like make any changes because this is more comfortable where I am right now.
Yeah,
Wow.
absolutely.
Wow. That is some good shit. I'm not even gonna lie to you. So with that respect right there, with your significant other maybe not wanting to make the change right now, what can you cut? And you do really want them because you love them to live healthier. Is there anything like you maybe as a spouse can do to kind of show your support and show that, hey, I'm not trying to put you down. I'm not trying to, I care about you so much that I want you healthy.
Yeah. So when I go in two different directions with this. As part of my my brain going towards fitness and part of it going towards nutrition. Everybody needs to find movement that works for them. So whether that is maybe just suggesting to go for an extra walk or pick an outdoor activity versus going to the movies on a Sunday, or choosing to add something in one side dish that's a bit healthier. So it might be just those incremental things where it's like throwing in some extra fruit in the refrigerator to where nobody said you had to eat it, but if it's there, maybe they're more likely to grab it when they open the refrigerator and they're like, oh, what should I have? So it doesn't need to be, I think forcing it is where it gets hard. But if you try to go ahead and just kind of be that encouraging versus judgmental support system, and, understanding that everybody's going to be at their own speed and it might take a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's huge. That's awesome.
Now, so is there like, and this is maybe like a super generic question, but I'm trying to think of maybe people who haven't really thought a lot about it though. Are there like go-to foods that you recommend to people? Like when they're trying to make those subtle changes where they're not sure exactly what they want to change or how much they want to change, but they know they want to change something about their eating habits. Are there go-to foods that you give people that you say, okay, well, why don't you try to incorporate a little bit of this or a little bit of that? Or does it always have to base on the individual?
So if I had to give general advice to everybody, I try to have people start with one meal. So maybe not specific foods, but one meal. Mm-hmm. Tackle one meal first, and try to make that one meal balanced. So incorporating like a small amount of if we're talking about like lunch and dinner, a small amount of vegetables, sure. Having some type of carb option, even if again it's not sweet potatoes, maybe it's rice, maybe it's a roll. It doesn't have to be 100% like on the healthy train right away, but just understanding, okay, I'm having some vegetables, I'm having a little bit of carbs, I'm having some protein, and if I do still want something sweet, having some fruit on the side. So I really try to work with people like what meal do we focus on first? If you had to pick one throughout the day, maybe it's snacks, maybe it's your snacks, and that's where we target it first. Maybe it's, I know I need to eat breakfast, but all I usually have is my coffee in the morning, but by 11 a.m. I'm dragging. Okay, so where do we need to kind of incorporate some stuff in the morning that's going to tide you over to a little bit later in the afternoon? And usually it's the positive feedback usually comes within a week or 2 weeks after kind of making these small changes to one meal, to where we're starting to notice some just energy changes and stuff.
Yeah,
that's absolutely. And you touched on carbs there. I feel like there is a negative stigma against carbs. And I personally, I love good, healthy carbs. So I mean like brown rice, your sweet potatoes, your regular potatoes, quinoa, couscous. Let's rattle them on. I'm totally for those. but I would like to hear your views on carbs. And lay it on me. If I'm wrong, you can tell me. Awesome.
Mhm.
Oh no.
We'll get it back. Stay rolling because I can just cut it out.
Okay.
Yeah, give her a second. This is
That's
fucking good though. I'm really
Yeah.
enjoying this.
Yeah, it's really good.
We're 30 minutes in already.
Yeah, dude, because we can roll right into like
Because she already
talking
pretty
about.
much touched on those starting points. She's already touched on a lot of that.
Yep.
So
And we
can
already
go right
did the
into, like,
carb. And she just said sports
motivational.
nutrition. Well, she
Yep.
just said the sports nutrition, so I could talk about JJ wanting to know about like young kids and doing sports before like practicing
Yep.
game. So we could
Yep.
roll, and I'll ask her very specific foods so that
Yep.
it could help. Yeah,
Yep. Perfect.
if she gets
That
back
would
on.
be- Yeah, she'll be good. Yeah, she'll be good. Yeah, this is good. I like this. This is our language here, man. I love this stuff.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. I'd
got
like
all
to
my stuff
understand-
for my steel oats today, by the way.
What's that?
I got all my shit to make my steel oats breakfast in the morning.
And boy, dude, I already made it for Josh.
Did you?
So I'm bringing it in the morning. Oh yeah.
How much do you make at once?
So I get the steel cut oats pack. I'll take a picture of what I have,
Yeah.
and it's not too much. So like it's a good serving.
Yeah. But you put it in the fridge and then it's in the morning?
Yeah, dude, that is the key. That is the key.
Do you put the fruit in it before? Or
Yes.
Like,
Yep.
So while it's in the fridge, the fruit's already in it?
Oh yeah, because then the best thing about it is when you put it in the microwave for about like 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Yeah.
The banana starts to caramelize, the blueberries start to get soft and open up, dude,
Yeah.
and it takes on a whole other flavor profile. It's amazing.
Yeah, I'm saying I'm already rolling on that. Let's do
Oh,
that.
dude, it's so good. So good. But one question I want to ask her is about like, what is a recommended caloric deficit? Because like,
Yep.
I don't know. You know, I personally don't know, but
Yeah.
I've
Perfect,
heard
yeah.
it's like 250 or 500, but I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I've always heard 500. Yeah.
And like how you go about figuring that out.
Yeah. 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 All right. Give her another minute here. She's not messaging me, so she's probably just trying to log back on. Do you hear the dog in the background sometimes or no?
You sure do.
My phone died. It's turning back on, she said.
Oh, Christ.
Hold on. I said that was just now, right? Yeah, I know. Cool. It's all good. It's all
So
good.
she was talking about sports nutrition, about the healthy carbs. I would like her to touch on like bad carbs.
Yes.
Like,
Yep.
can you be
Just follow-
specific?
Yeah, just follow that up with what you're talking about now with bad carbs. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what are some bad carbs to stay away from? Bagels.
Yep.
I fucking love bagels, but I know they're not good for you.
Bagels, I miss
Dave's
bagels.
Killer, dude. But do you get Dave's Killer bread bagels?
I haven't done their bagels yet. That's what when I have bread though. That's what I have is Dave's Killer bread. But I've tried to stop eating bagels just to cut that.
No,
part
me
out.
too.
You know what I mean? But are they good?
Yeah, dude, it's hard, man. I'm not even gonna lie to you because my boys eat Dave's Killer bread bagels, and I'm like, man, the blueberry. My wife gets blueberry, cinnamon raisin ones, and like plain and everything ones. So it's like I have assortment. I don't touch them, but they look so good. I do like one of those weird things where it is sniff it, or something like that. That'll put it away.
Right.
I don't do that. It's sick. Fuck yeah.
Oh man, I haven't. That was like my go-to breakfast too.
Oh,
Like
dude, me too.
eggs and a
Me too.
bagel. Like, oh,
Yes.
I fucking love it.
Speaking my
But,
language. Yep.
cut that shit out, man. That's
No more. Yeah. No more.
Man.
No more.
No.
Yeah.
I want to ask her a little. I think she's pretty big into macros. So like popular diets, I'm sure she'll, when we say diets, popular, lifestyle changes, whatever you want to call them. I'm sure she'll touch on that too. So
it's good too that she touched on just focusing on one meal or small changes.
Super interesting, isn't it? One meal you got to work on.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
So yeah, you can. I left it on. I didn't turn it off because I could just edit that whole part out and we'll be good. So you were just talking about the carbs and when you're working with the athletes and all that.
Yeah. So I work with an Olympic weightlifter, and one of the exciting times is right around competition times, because we really have to dial in intake and modify all of that. Make sure that hydration's good. Protein, fats, like all of it, that it's in balance and it makes sense to what she's training, when she's training. Because she'll come in and be like, I didn't eat much this week. I'm like, how are your lifts this week? Crap. Okay.
Yeah.
So on you really start to see how all of those small changes can really make a big difference in a top trained athlete. But then we take that back to kind of the average Joe who's trying to work out or start working out and stuff like that, to where if we see those big of changes with small modifications to a high performing athlete, making those small changes to us, whether we realize it or not, makes makes a big difference without even having to do much, which is why I really try to focus one meal at a time, because when we kind of try to do too much, it becomes overwhelming, and then we don't build up that confidence to feel like I've got this and I can keep going. Whereas if we start from a small piece of it, it's so much easier to be like, okay, I've got this breakfast thing down now. Let me start looking at lunch instead of going out and ordering food for lunch. Like maybe 2 days a week, I start to bring something, So it's that kind of incremental thing to where, is it super mainstream? Is it gonna get you, Instagram ad? Not all the time, because it really does take somebody who wants to be, who really wants that change, and understands that it's not going to happen tomorrow. It's just not. So it's one of the challenging things. I would say that the people that I meet with initially for intros, not all of them do choose to work with me. And I know that that's why. I'm not that quick fix person, and I'm 100% okay with that. Because I know
it's not a quick fix.
Right.
It's not.
It's a lifestyle. Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing, so I know we touch on like the healthy carbs, but is there typically some carbs that you will maybe recommend to stay away from?
Yeah, it's really just the refined carbs. So it's really the super processed items, whether that be anything from sugary cereals, even to like if we're talking about oatmeal, like if
shit. I love my steel cut oats. I love my steel cut oats.
Steel cut oats are great, but maybe not like the dinosaur ones that have.
Oh, praise Jesus! Oh, thank God, April. I was like, I'm fucked.
But so even within each thing, there's so many different variations. But if those dinosaur oats are better than, or a step in the right direction from maybe 2 donuts in the morning, then that's that stepping stone. But it's really those refined, highly processed foods. It's typically what you would consider a convenience food, something that you would be able to pick up super quickly and not really think about having to prepare. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense.
If I say bread, like what do you think of? First thing that when I say like someone who's on a diet, we'll call it, and we talk about bread. What's your viewpoints?
So really trying to focus on a whole grain bread or a seeded bread. And we say that because of the amount of fiber that it contains, and then also the additional protein that it contains. So it's not to be like, here, I want you to eat a piece of cardboard, but there is a lot more nutrients that are in that one piece of bread that you get a little bit more bang for your bread, your buck, so. And then, there's different variations, and like Dave's Killer Bread, is one of the ones that a lot of clients tend to eat, or the Ezekiel bread. But the idea is that when we have those really fine processed foods, we lose a lot of the nutrients that we could be getting for eating the same amount of food. So you might have 2 sandwiches, but that protein content and that fiber content that we need just automatically bumps up by just switching out that bread.
Yeah. Yep. So
go ahead.
No,
John,
go ahead,
sorry.
BG. Go ahead, man. Have at it.
So you touched on sports nutrition, and I have to give my buddy Jay a shout out. He's a coach for his son and his daughter's team. And I told him that you were coming on our podcast this week. And so he was super interested in trying to help educate his team, in essence, the parents as well.
Yeah.
Really trying to understand what the kids should be eating before practice, before a game, and then maybe if it's a tournament. Can you kind of just help give some guidance to perhaps not just the kids and the coaches, but the parents on what they really should be eating before practice, and like the adequate amount of water, and then also like game day?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did a lot of research specifically with adolescent athletes. It's something that I really find is important. There's a lot of research on collegiate athletes, right? Because they're great population. They're right at the colleges where a lot of the research is being done. Work with adolescent athletes is a lot less prevalent, and it's harder to find stuff on. One of the things that I find that's really important is that, like you said, not only helping the athletes understand, but also helping the parents, but then also the coaches. If we don't realize how much the coaches actually have a big impact on how the implementation of all of these practices come into play. So when the coaching staff has a good grasp on how important it is to their athletes, especially youth athletes, it makes the whole process worthwhile. So I've worked with youth baseball teams and just across the board, some other teams as well. One of the things that I try to help them realize is going to practice on an empty stomach is not ideal. Everybody's digestion is different. Timing is different for everybody. So it might be everybody's running late, quick, gotta grab something like a go-go squeeze, or just some fresh fruit cut up is a great way to just kind of get something into your system quickly before practice, without it being super heavy. If we're talking about maybe a later game in the afternoon, having a meal an hour to 2 hours ahead of time would be ideal. So getting, even just a sandwich in with a piece of fruit on the side and some water, or even Gatorade at that point, is helpful. But that larger meal needing to be out a bit of time. So ideally it wouldn't be trying to shove a whole dinner down your kids' throats before they have practice at 6:00, because that's when athletes tend to feel like a lot of digestive issues and have a hard time being able to function the way that they need to. And that over time can create a resistance to eating prior to playing. So that's another thing that we see, and every sport is so different with their needs. So longer duration time, soccer players really have to focus on fueling properly before, because a lot of them, especially if they get a lot of playing time, don't have that break.
Yeah.
So if we're talking about it being a really long game, we're worried about hydration as well as their fuel stores just dropping. So that's where those
Hmm.
go-go squeezes are really important. Gatorade's really important. If you're just sitting on your couch doing nothing, having a ton of Gatorade is just unnecessary calories. It's extra sugar and stuff like that. But when it's properly worked into sport, it can be a really helpful tool as far as making sure that the athletes stay safe. Understanding that if they haven't had anything to eat, they're playing for a long time, it can really jeopardize their safety as well, because they'll just that blood sugar starts dropping whether they have any issues or not, right? That blood sugar just starts dropping when those fuel stores are getting used. And without it being replenished, it makes it really challenging for them to maintain that level of performance that they probably would be able to for a longer period of
Hmm.
time if they had properly eaten.
Right. And that hydration you
Yeah.
talk about, that starts the day before. So
Absolutely.
and people don't realize that. They think if they, oh, I'm going to drink 2 bottles of water before my game, I'm going to be good. It's like, no, you'll still be dehydrated, like, because your body doesn't use the hydration that quickly like that. You're not taking all that water and your body's using it in 15 minutes before the game that you drank it,
Yeah,
So
I say that
you
to
got to start the night before or whatever like that.
my adult clients. I said, you ever try to work out on a Monday after you had a really long Sunday or a really long
Right.
weekend of drinking?
Yeah.
It's tough. It
Yeah.
takes a hot second for those muscles to be properly hydrated. Um, and it's like a sponge, right? Those muscles are like a sponge. So if you have that sponge that's pretty dry, it's there and it can move, but it's rough. You hydrate it, you can bend it, twist it, move it. Everything feels so much better
Hmm.
on that end. So yes, water. But when we try
Yeah.
to talk about around sport, it's the sports drinks do come into where it's like actually a tool. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
it's not
Not
just
just a gimmick.
right. So
Yeah.
there's Gatorade Zero, but like when we're trying to get calories into an athlete that is playing for an extended period of time, we want something that has some calories and some sugar in it
Right.
and stuff, because that's what we're trying to get into them. So as far as if you have a youth athlete, I always try to have something light before, trying to get it in, within an hour will be helpful. You want those easily digestible carbs. So fruits are really good as well. Um, then if you're going into post game, post practice, having a solid meal that's got a little bit of everything, just like we would eat, normally, is really important as well. Getting in that protein is super important for their muscle regrowth. Those carbs, again, they come up all the time, but if they're having, I know a lot of people who play several days a week in a row between practices and games, if they don't have um, enough fuel throughout the week, they start to tank out during the end of the week, and it's really tough for them to maintain that level of performance towards the end of the week as well. I think the biggest thing that I try to help parents and coaches realize is that we want to be able to give them this information and have these foods available for them, but also understand that forcing it can be a negative thing as well. So just understanding that just like adults, everybody's going to take everything in a little bit differently. So there's days where my son will eat everything that he knows that is going to fuel him up, and help with recovery and stuff. And there's other days where he's just like, I'm a kid. Like I just I
Right.
just want to eat the
Yeah.
good stuff, and being okay with that, and understanding um, that they're kids too. And a lot of the stuff that we talk about with adults of having to kind of alter and modify, they're in that critical stage to where we really need to be mindful of how we're interacting with them around their food choices, especially, from a coaching perspective. If we're trying to promote, that healthy lifestyle, healthy, performance, nutrition, with our team. How does that look with bringing snacks before, if you have parents that are bringing snacks, offering them a list of things that are quick and easy, that is kind of helping versus maybe, moving us in the opposite direction.
Right.
So do we need to bring back the orange slices at halftime? Like, do you remember that growing up?
I have pictures
Those
of
are clutch.
I have pictures of like the totes that we brought to my son's football game. We were out in Rhode Island a few months, probably the end of August, and it was like totes of, there was grapes, there was let's see, we had a little bit of everything. We had grapes, we had the go-go squeezes, we had the little beef sticks, we had we had the small Gatorades.
Yep.
They were all set, and it was so important. And we knew that with the travel time, right? So we have to think about all of those things. The travel time to get down there was about an hour and a half to 2 hours. They hop on the field, like coaches are like already like, let's go. So we knew that we had halftime to be able to refuel the kids before they were back out onto the field. And then afterwards, we still had stuff ready for them. So maybe they were going to grab something after, but they were able to grab something that we knew was going to be helpful for their recovery right afterwards.
Right.
And like I was kind of joking, but we all knew that we grew up on orange slices at halftime. It was great. But April, in all seriousness, is that like a good idea to maybe start focusing on bringing that back? Like if your coach is saying, "Hey, this is a great source to refuel at halftime."
100%. 100%. I think it's probably one of the most critical things that you can do, especially if you have a highly competitive team that you're working with. There's so many I know so many kids on so many travel teams. They're away and all this stuff. So even if you are one of those parents that have kids that travel and stuff like that, understanding that packing, the car with some extra granola bars, some extra water, Gatorade, having, the apples will stay there, they don't need to be refrigerated.
Right.
You can just take a bag of apples with you. All of those little things can make a really big difference as far as not relying on those convenience foods, because you're just like, oh, like let's stop here and this is all that they have. It gets better. It's gotten better. I feel like you can get a lot more fresh things at stops, but it's not always as convenient as being like, hey, there's some, some bars over there or whatever.
Yeah. So, we talked a lot about, the youth athletics and stuff and how to kind of fuel them and whatnot. And I know, judging a lot about what you post for yourself on social media and stuff, it seems like, and it's always been for me personally too, the best way that I've been able to digest food, not actually digest, but like mentally digest food, is, focusing on my macros and, your fats, your proteins, your carbs. Focusing on, the importance of those, making sure that they are distributed the right way at the right times. Is that something primarily for you in your day-to-day that you focus on a lot? Like, do you focus on a lot on your macros and how to break those down?
So I've gotten to a pretty good point to know without having to think about it, if that makes sense.
It does, yep.
So at this particular point, I wouldn't say that I'm counting every single thing, but I do those check-ins once in a while where it'll be a day that I'll log everything that I have so I can kind of get a gauge on stuff and see where I'm at. But generally speaking, I can meal prep pretty freely throughout the week and just know that if I'm incorporating this, and this, like that works in, well for me for the week. I know if I fill one of my travel packs with half full of oatmeal and half full of fruit, that just works into kind of everything all along. And then I'm somebody who I don't have diabetes or anything like that, but I am very aware of my blood sugar throughout the day. If I go a long period without eating, drink, or anything, like it's an instant, like it's just that instant drop. So for me, it's figuring out how do I incorporate healthy things throughout the day or have access to them, that makes sure that I stay stable throughout the day and I don't experience those big fluctuations. So one of the things that I work into my everyday is my big, huge lunchbox that I take everywhere with me. It's
Like a construction worker walking
it is
around.
100%, like it's like this big. It's ridiculous. But it's got 4 compartments for all of my drinks for the day, and then it's got a huge compartment for all of my stuff. And that's one of the things that is like it literally comes with me everywhere. So having access to all of that food that I know works within my day without even really having to think about it is one of the things that makes it kind of like an autopilot kind of thing, if that makes sense, to where I don't really have to stress about if I'm out and about or I'm rushing from here or rushing from there. My lunchbox is in the back seat. I can just grab an apple out of it. I can grab another thing of water, and I don't have to be like, oh, I've got to travel from here to here, and it's going to be like 45 minutes, and I have to stop at Dunkin' because I'm super hungry and there's nothing, versus I'm like, I already have something in the back seat. Like, I'm good to go.
Right.
It's smart.
Yeah,
That's smart.
it is. That goes with discipline. That goes with, again, changing the lifestyle mindset, not just, a fad diet. You're not just focusing on those things. You're changing everything about yourself and your day. So
yeah, for sure.
Huge kudos to you for that, because it's hard. It's so hard, and you've been doing it for a while now. So
yeah, that poor lunchbox. It's got its own spot in the car. It's got its own spot at work. But everybody just
got a car seat knows. For it.
Yeah, everybody just knows.
Here comes April in her lunchbox.
Yep.
That's awesome. That's so funny. So with and I don't want to keep you too much longer here. I know we could talk forever about this stuff, but you also have a 3:15 or whatever wake up call, so I don't want to kill you. But so for someone who is, more so looking to just start a basic lifestyle change, and they're not exactly sure where to start. They're not exactly sure on how to incorporate fitness with nutrition. Where would you guide them to say, okay, if I know it goes by, how much they do, say fitness, how many times a week are you working out? How many meals a day are you eating, or what are you eating like, right? So for you, when would you ever encounter someone and say, let me rephrase it, I guess. Would you ever encounter someone who thinks they have a grasp on something and then totally have to change not even their workout style or their nutrition, but their outlook on both of those things? Like, how often do you struggle with people and have not a back and forth, but a pretty healthy struggle with those things with them?
So as you can imagine, everybody walks into the office with their idea of what they think nutrition is, or what they've heard that they think is the right way to eat or the right things to eat. I think having an appreciation for everybody being where they're at right now, and understanding that some people may have very, very flawed views on food, and some people really have, like, they're out there, to where it's something that you definitely could potentially be a negative impact on their health because of what they're doing. It's really understanding is that they would continue doing those things without intervention. So any steps forward that we can make is progress, and understanding that it might not be correcting them in a sense, as far as being like, well, trying to jam all of your meals within a short, or all of your calories within a short period of time is not really healthy per se, based on what they have going on. Everybody's different, but maybe that's what their thought process is like, if I just eat it all in one meal for the day, then I'm good. But understanding that, okay, what is the reason that they believe that? And if that's something that works for them, okay, if we're going to work with, that's what you're at, where can we within that work on making some changes? So maybe if we're starting here and trying to figure out, okay, you're going to only eat between these times, and that's just what you've got your heart set on doing. What are the foods that you're eating within that time, and how can we maybe modify those a little bit to make them more nutrient dense? So, you know, it's one of those things where everybody's going to walk in a little bit different, and everybody's going to want to walk out with a little bit different. I have people that walk in and they're like, I want my macros written out. I need a meal plan. Tell me what I'm eating. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That's what I need. In black and white, that's what I need. I have other people that if I handed that to them, instant shutdown. Instant shutdown. We wouldn't get anywhere. So being able to be a coach that understands that is really, or finding a coach that understands that, right? So if you are looking to work with somebody, understanding that whoever you find to work with, you need to connect with them, whether that's with fitness, whether that's nutrition, whether that's mindset coaching, whatever it is, you have to be able to connect with that person and really be able to empathize with where they're at right now and their desire to change, but maybe not sure how to change just yet.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I think that's so awesome. And you can tell that's your philosophy, right? And you know that's not everyone's philosophy. So it's cool to hear that perspective, because like you said, everyone has their own ideals of, you know, oh, I'm going to do this, and, you know, this is what works for me. But you know, you know, right? Like, you know, but you're not forcing it on them that you know. And you'll make it work in their own little spectrum and all that. So that's a huge credit to you. That's fantastic. BG, like I said, I'm going to stop talking now because I can ask April questions the entire time. So
I got one final quick fire. All right. So this is a good one. What is your why, April? Meaning, what drives you or who drives you to be successful in life?
I believe we all leave a positive impact on the people that we come encounter with. I know that whether it is my son, whether it is family members, it is the people that work for me, it is the people that I train in class, my nutrition clients. I know for a fact that as we work together or even move past each other through time, I've made that positive impact on them in one way, shape, or form. I had a client who I hadn't been working with for a while shoot me a message the other day and just be like, here, this is what, like, you know, my husband and I had for dinner. And it, you know, just knowing that those long lasting effects are staying with people over time, is what kind of fuels me. You know, like one of my power talks the other day at the end of our class was, you know, you bring the energy to the room and you bring the energy to every interaction throughout the day, and making it be that positive interaction, because you don't know what everybody else is going through in that moment in time. So that was my challenge for them. And I said to them, that's my gift to you guys today, because, you know, me giving that to them and them being able to give that to other people, like that's what's important to me. Right. So we can get into the macros, we can get into the lifts and you know, all of that stuff. But it's that long-term, right? It's that long-term healthy lifestyle. It's that long-term training our minds to kind of focus on those positives. If you check out the gap versus the gain, Brian.
Oh, I wrote it down.
Yeah, you'll see. But really understanding is that so many people live in that gap. And if we really try to kind of measure backwards, like it talks about in the book, and focusing on all of the gains that we've had throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month, you know, all of those things, it really reprograms your mind and to understand like how impactful that, you know, we can be in even a short period of time.
Yeah. That's awesome. And honestly, April, you know, John and I want to say we appreciate the work that you're doing and having such an incredible impact for the people that you are working with. And I know the audience today, that when they hear this podcast, that you definitely will have an impact on them as well. So I thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll definitely have to get back on, because there's 700.
There's so much to talk about. Yeah. Oh my God. It's so funny. My wife just texted me. She's like, "How did it go?" And I wanted to be like, "I want to talk for 3 more hours." But
But yeah,
so
there's so
let
many
me.
aspects to everything, you know.
There really is, and for right now, let's just say we're definitely going to talk again.
Yes.
And if there is anything that we can plug for you, whether it's your social medias, how people could reach you for whatever, go right ahead. Let them know where to reach you, and we obviously can tag that stuff in our future posts too. But where can people find you at?
Yeah, so the easiest way to get a hold of me is Instagram. It's Flores, Flores, 2, the number 2, N as in Nancy, C as in Charlie. So Flores 2NC. So that's the best way to either follow me or go ahead and send me a message. I love chatting with people. I love answering questions. All of them are definitely more than welcome. And like I said, whether it's a coach like you guys or myself or a trainer, you have to find the one that fits, so.
And where's your classes at 5 a.m. just so that the world knows?
So I instruct at the Max Challenge in South Windsor. Actually,
Awesome.
Kim runs that. So
Yeah. Yep.
I've been working over there for a couple years now. I teach a couple at the gym in Enfield that I work out as well. So I'm a little bit all over the place, but I like it that way. I like to
Yeah.
stay
That's
busy, so.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Well, thank you again.
That's awesome.
This was awesome. We will definitely have you on again. In the meantime, guys, thank you for joining in today. This was episode 5, all about nutrition, health, and fitness. We are talking to someone who has a fabulous mindset on all of those things and in life in general. So we hope to talk to you guys again soon. We will see you guys next Monday for episode 6. Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.